Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. Kate had been alone on Haven Station for 18 days, and in that time, she'd grown comfortable with the silence. Well, not silence exactly. Olindra 5 was anything but quiet. The bioluminescent forests outside hummed with alien life. The atmospheric processors wheezed their mechanical lullabies, and the station itself creaked and groaned like an old ship at sea. But it was predictable noise, the kind you could map in your head and forget about. So when she heard breathing behind her, slow, steady, perfectly rhythmic breathing, her entire body locked up like someone had hit her power switch. She'd been taking atmospheric readings in the observation greenhouse, a glass-domed sanctuary filled with native olindran plants that the previous research team had cultivated. The air was thick and humid, heavy with the scent of something between jasmine and burnt copper. Her tablet beeped softly as it collected data on oxygen levels, nitrogen content, trace elements that might explain why the local flora glowed like a rave at midnight. And then, the breathing. Not her breathing. Someone else's breathing. Something else's breathing. Kate's hands froze over her tablet, her own breath catching in her throat. The station was supposed to be empty. The supply ship wasn't due for another 3 weeks. The nearest human settlement was 600 kilometers away, across terrain that would make a mountain goat weep. She was alone. She was supposed to be alone. The breathing continued, matching her rhythm almost perfectly. In, out, like a mirror she couldn't see. Every horror movie she'd ever watched suddenly seemed like a documentary. Every cautionary tale about solo research postings felt personal. Her mind raced through possibilities. Equipment malfunction, auditory hallucination, some kind of atmospheric phenomenon that created sound echoes, alien wildlife that had breached the station's defenses, or, and this was the one that made her stomach drop, something that had been inside the whole time, waiting. She counted to 3 in her head. 1, 2, 3. Kate spun around, her tablet raised like a weapon, which was hilarious considering it was about as threatening as a particularly aggressive napkin, and found nothing. Nothing visible anyway. The greenhouse stretched out behind her, rows of luminescent plants swaying gently in the controlled airflow. The observation windows curved overhead, revealing Olindra 5's twin moons hanging in a purple-black sky. Everything looked exactly as it should. Empty. Safe. Normal. Except the plants near the back wall were moving wrong. Not swaying with the air currents. Moving. Deliberately. In a pattern that matched, oh, that was deeply unsettling. In a pattern that matched her own breathing. Kate's eyes narrowed. She held her breath. The plants stopped moving. She exhaled slowly. The plants moved again, a gentle wave motion that rippled through the bioluminescent fronds. "Okay," she whispered to herself, her voice tight. "Okay, that's new." She took a deliberate step forward, watching the plants carefully. As she moved, she caught it, just for a second, a shimmer in the air, like heat distortion, or the way light bends through water. And then she saw the eyes. Large eyes. Curious eyes. Eyes that absolutely should not have been floating 3 feet off the ground between her and a particularly aggressive-looking fern with purple tendrils. The shimmer intensified, and suddenly there was a creature standing there. Standing was perhaps too generous a term. It was crouching, its body low to the ground, in a posture that was equal parts predatory and cautious. It was about the size of a house cat, if house cats were made of liquid mercury and bad decisions. Its body was semi-translucent, shifting between visible and invisible with each breath it took. The skin, if you could call it skin, rippled with patterns that mimicked the surrounding environment, a living camouflage that would make a chameleon weep with envy. 4 limbs, each ending in what looked like retractable claws. A head that was vaguely feline, but too intelligent, too aware. And those eyes, huge and multifaceted like gems, fixed directly on Kate, with an intensity that made her feel like a bug under a microscope. "Oh," Kate breathed, her scientific brain finally catching up with her panic response. "Oh, you're one of them." The previous research team had called them mimics. The official designation was something unpronounceable that involved clicking sounds and a whistle. But mimics had stuck. Apex predators native to Olindra 5, capable of perfect camouflage, possessing intelligence that hovered somewhere in the zone marked, "We're not entirely sure, but it's probably a lot." Adults could grow to the size of a small car. They hunted in packs. They'd never been successfully observed up close because they were, frankly, terrifying and very good at not being seen. And this was a baby apex predator, in her greenhouse, staring at her like she was the most fascinating thing it had ever encountered. Kate's heart was still hammering, but her curiosity was starting to override her survival instinct, a character flaw that had gotten her into trouble more times than she could count. She lowered her tablet slowly, keeping her movements smooth and non-threatening. The creature's head tilted, mimicking her motion with eerie precision. She raised her left hand, fingers spread. The creature lifted one of its 4 limbs, appendages spreading in a mirror image of her gesture. "You're copying me," Kate said, wonder creeping into her voice. "You're actually copying me." The creature's throat vibrated, and a sound emerged that made Kate's skin crawl, a warbling, distorted echo of her own voice, like someone had recorded her words and played them back through a broken speaker underwater. "Nope," Kate said, taking an involuntary step back. "Nope, that's horrifying. Please don't do that again." The creature cocked its head the other way, and then, and this was somehow worse, it made another sound. A laugh. Or at least, an attempt at a laugh. It sounded like bubbles popping mixed with wind chimes having a nervous breakdown. Despite everything, despite the fact that she was alone on a remote station with a baby predator that could probably still kill her if it wanted to, despite violating about 15 different safety protocols, despite the very real possibility that this creature's mother was somewhere nearby and very unhappy, Kate laughed. It was a nervous laugh, the kind that escapes when your brain can't quite process what's happening. But it was genuine. And the creature's eyes seemed to brighten, its body language shifting from cautious to something that looked almost playful. "Okay," Kate said, still laughing slightly, her voice shaking. "Okay, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. I should call this in. I should lock myself in the secure lab and wait for extraction. I should definitely not be standing here having a moment with something that's probably catalogued as extremely dangerous." The creature took a small step forward, still mirroring her posture. When she didn't retreat, it took another step, and another, until it was close enough that Kate could see the way its skin rippled with each breath, the patterns shifting like oil on water, reflecting the bioluminescent plants around them. She crouched down slowly, bringing herself closer to its eye level. The creature crouched lower, matching her. "Where's your family?" Kate asked softly, knowing it couldn't understand but needing to fill the silence with something. "Where's your mom? Because if she's anywhere nearby, we're both in trouble." The creature reached out one appendage, moving with deliberate slowness. Kate held her breath as it touched her outstretched hand, the contact feather light and surprisingly warm. The texture was bizarre, smooth but not slick, solid but somehow fluid, like touching living silk. For a long moment, they stayed like that. Human and alien, scientist and predator, two species that had no business being this close, connected by nothing more than curiosity and the strange intimacy of matched breathing. Kate's mind was racing. This was a first contact scenario, even if it was technically an indigenous species. The mimics had never approached humans before. They'd been observed from distance, studied through drones and long-range sensors, but never engaged directly. And here was a juvenile, alone, willingly interacting with her. The implications were staggering. The research opportunities were invaluable. And the danger, well, the danger was probably off the charts. But Kate had never been particularly good at risk assessment when something interesting was happening. "I'm going to regret this," she muttered, sitting back on her heels. "I'm absolutely going to regret this. But—" The creature settled into a sitting position that was clearly meant to mimic hers, though its alien physiology made it look vaguely uncomfortable, like a cat trying to sit like a human. Kate couldn't help but smile. "You're kind of ridiculous, you know that?" The creature made that broken wind chimes laugh sound again, and despite everything, Kate felt something shift in her chest. Not quite trust, she wasn't that foolish, but something adjacent to it. Recognition, maybe. Connection. "All right," she said, making a decision that would probably haunt her later. "All right, you can stay, for now. But if your mom shows up and eats me, I'm going to be really annoyed about it." The creature's eyes seemed to gleam with something that might have been amusement, or might have been hunger, or might have been something else entirely that humans didn't have a word for yet. Kate stood up slowly, and the creature stood with her. Movements synchronized. She took a step toward the greenhouse exit, and it followed, matching her pace exactly. When she stopped, it stopped. When she turned, it turned. "Oh, this is going to be complicated," Kate said, but she was smiling. "This is going to be so incredibly complicated." Behind them, the bioluminescent plants swayed in the artificial breeze, their soft glow painting everything in shades of blue and green and violet. The atmospheric processors hummed their mechanical songs. The station creaked and settled. And in the observation greenhouse of Haven Station, on a remote planet 600 kilometers from the nearest human soul, a xenobiologist and an apex predator cub breathed in perfect synchronization, neither quite sure what happened next, but both willing to find out. Kate's tablet beeped, reminding her that she had 16 more data collection points to complete before the day's cycle ended. She looked down at the creature, which looked up at her with those enormous, faceted eyes. "I should probably name you," she said, "since you're apparently moving in. Can't just keep calling you the terrifying baby predator in my head." The creature tilted its head, waiting. Kate thought about it for a moment, remembering her first instinct when she'd heard that breathing, the way her entire body had wanted to dash away, to run, to escape. And how, instead, she'd stayed. "Dash," she said. "I'll call you Dash, because that's what I almost did, and didn't." Dash, because that was its name now, for better or worse, made a soft chirping sound that might have been approval, or might have been the alien equivalent of "humans are weird," or might have been gas. Hard to say. Kate picked up her tablet and headed for the next collection point. Dash followed, a semi-invisible shadow that breathed when she breathed, moved when she moved, and was absolutely, definitely going to make her life infinitely more complicated. But as she watched Dash try to mimic the way she held her tablet, holding one of its appendages up at the same angle with an expression of intense concentration. Kate couldn't quite regret it. Not yet, anyway. The first rule Kate broke was not reporting the encounter immediately. The second rule she broke was feeding Dash. The third through 15th rules she broke involved basically everything she did over the next 6 days, culminating in what she would later describe as the coffee incident, and what station logs would mysteriously fail to record entirely. It started innocently enough. Kate had gone about her normal routine: sample collection, data analysis, equipment maintenance, the usual tedium of solo research posting, except now she had a shadow. A semi-invisible, occasionally terrifying shadow that mimicked everything she did with the dedication of a method actor preparing for the role of a lifetime. Dash followed her everywhere. Not just physically followed. That would have been manageable. No, Dash followed her movements, her gestures, her habits. When Kate stretched in the morning, Dash stretched, its alien body contorting into shapes that shouldn't have been possible. When Kate ate, Dash watched with intense focus, studying the mechanics of fork-to-mouth coordination like it was the secret to faster-than-light travel. The coffee incident happened on day 3. Kate had been up late analyzing tissue samples from the northern bog region. Fascinating stuff, really. Fungi that produce their own light through a chemical process nobody had quite figured out yet. And she needed caffeine, the way ships needed fuel. She'd stumbled into the small station galley, barely conscious, and started the ancient coffee maker that wheezed and sputtered like it was planning its retirement. Dash had been sleeping, or what passed for sleeping, in the corner, curled into a ball that made its camouflage go full disco ball, random patterns flickering across its skin. But the moment the coffee maker gurgled to life, those enormous eyes snapped open, focusing on Kate with laser intensity. Kate poured her coffee, added the synthetic creamer that tasted like regret and chemicals, and took that first beautiful sip. Dash's throat vibrated with interest. "No," Kate said, not even looking at the creature. "Absolutely not. This is mine. Coffee is not for baby predators." Dash made a soft, questioning chirp. "Don't give me that sound," Kate muttered, taking another sip. "You don't even have the right kind of digestive system. This would probably kill you, or make you vibrate through several dimensions. Neither of those outcomes is good." Dash stood up, moving with that eerie grace that made it look like it was floating rather than walking, and positioned itself directly in front of Kate. Then, and Kate should have seen this coming, but was too undercaffeinated to think straight, Dash lifted one appendage to its mouth area in a perfect mimicry of Kate's drinking motion. Okay, that's actually kind of impressive," Kate admitted. "But the answer is still no." Dash repeated the gesture, adding a small tilt of its head that was either calculated manipulation or genuine confusion. With Dash, it was getting harder to tell the difference. "Fine," Kate sighed, her resolve crumbling like ancient pottery. "Fine, but just a tiny bit. And if you die, don't blame me." She poured approximately 2 drops of coffee into a small container and set it on the floor. Dash approached it with the caution of a bomb disposal expert, sniffed, or did whatever the alien equivalent of sniffing was, and then attempted to drink. What happened next would haunt Kate's dreams for weeks. Dash's entire body seized up, vibrated at a frequency that made the galley equipment rattle, flashed through about 15 different colors, including several that Kate was pretty sure didn't exist in normal space, made a sound like a piccolo being murdered, and then shot straight up toward the ceiling where it clung, trembling, for a solid 30 seconds. "Oh no," Kate breathed, setting down her cup. Oh no, Dash. Come down. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Dash dropped from the ceiling, landed with perfect grace that was deeply unfair given the circumstances, and then proceeded to bounce around the galley like someone had replaced its bones with springs. It was moving fast, impossibly fast, its camouflage going haywire so it looked like a glitch in reality, and Kate could swear it was making a sound that was either distress or the alien equivalent of whee! It took 20 minutes for the caffeine to wear off. 20 minutes of Kate chasing a hyperactive predator cub through the station while it ricocheted off walls, phased through its own confusion, and at one point appeared to briefly achieve flight. "Never again," Kate gasped, finally cornering Dash in the supply closet where it had collapsed into a shivering heap. "Never, ever again. We're both going to pretend this didn't happen." Dash made a weak chirping sound that definitely meant, "My head hurts, and I regret my choices." "Yeah," Kate said, sitting down next to the creature and gently stroking its head, which she'd learned Dash actually enjoyed, even if the texture was weird. "Me too, buddy. Me too." But despite the disasters, and there were many, Kate was learning things. Important things. Things that made her question everything the previous research teams had concluded about the mimics. They weren't just copying for survival or camouflage. They were learning. Actually, genuinely learning. By day 5, Dash had figured out how doors worked. Not just that doors opened, any reasonably intelligent creature could observe that, but how they opened. Dash had watched Kate input her access code exactly 3 times, and on the 4th attempt, used its appendages to tap out the sequence perfectly. Kate had stood there, stunned, as Dash looked back at her with what could only be described as pride. "That's a 6-digit alphanumeric code," Kate said quietly. "You shouldn't be able to remember that. You definitely shouldn't be able to replicate it with limbs that aren't designed for keypads." Dash chirped and walked through the open door like this was perfectly normal. The intelligence tests Kate started running, completely off the books, of course, were yielding results that made her simultaneously excited and terrified. Pattern recognition that exceeded most mammals, problem-solving that rivaled primates, memory retention that was honestly showing her up. And that was just the cognitive stuff. The emotional intelligence was what really got her. Dash had started anticipating her moods. When Kate was frustrated with malfunctioning equipment, Dash would settle quietly nearby, its presence calming without being intrusive. When she was excited about a discovery, Dash would mirror that energy, bouncing slightly and making happy chirping sounds. And once, when Kate had received a message from Earth that her grant funding was being cut, news that meant this posting might be her last real research opportunity, Dash had pressed against her leg and breathed in sync with her until the panic attack passed. "You're not supposed to be this smart," Kate whispered that night, sitting in the observation greenhouse with Dash curled against her side. "The reports said you were predators with advanced instincts. They didn't say you were people." Dash's eyes gleamed in the darkness, reflecting the bioluminescent plants around them. It made a soft sound, almost like a purr, and Kate felt its breathing slow to match her own relaxing rhythm. "This changes everything," she continued, more to herself than to Dash. "If your species is sentient, actually sentient, not just clever, then Olindra 5 can't be colonized. It's protected under the Sapient Rights Act. But proving that would require bringing you in for testing, and they'd take you away, and—" She stopped, realizing what she'd just thought. "They'd take you away. Like Dash was hers. Like this wasn't a research subject, but a— what? A friend? A companion? Something more complicated than human language had words for. "I'm in trouble," Kate said, laughing slightly. "I'm in so much trouble." Dash made that broken wind chimes laugh sound, which was getting less creepy and more endearing every time Kate heard it. It was on day 8 that Kate noticed the tracks. She'd been outside the station conducting soil samples, with Dash following at a safe distance, having learned that outside meant stay close to Kate because the world is big and scary when she saw them. Massive imprints in the soft ground near the station's perimeter, each one the size of a dinner plate. The distinctive pattern of mimic locomotion, but scaled up. Way up. Adult tracks. Fresh tracks, leading right up to the station's outer wall. Kate's blood went cold. She looked down at Dash, who had gone perfectly still, its camouflage flickering nervously. "Dash," Kate said carefully, "where's your family?" Dash made a small, uncertain sound, pressing closer to Kate's legs. She looked back at the tracks, following their path with her eyes. They circled the station multiple times, like something had been searching, assessing, watching. The most recent prints were less than 12 hours old, judging by the way the soil had settled. "They're looking for you," Kate breathed. "Oh, Dash, they've been looking for you." The gravity of the situation hit her all at once. She hadn't just befriended an alien creature. She'd essentially kidnapped someone's child. The fact that it had been accidental, that Dash had approached her, that she'd meant no harm, none of that would matter to a parent who'd been searching for their baby for over a week. Kate had studied enough predator behavior across multiple species to know one universal truth. You don't get between a mother and her offspring. Not if you want to keep all your important internal organs internal. "Okay," she said, her mind racing through scenarios and finding nothing good. "Okay, we need a plan. I don't know what we need, but it definitely involves you not getting eaten and me not getting eaten, in that order of priority." Dash looked up at her with those enormous eyes, and Kate could swear the creature understood exactly how much danger they were both in. That night, Kate barely slept. She kept the station's external sensors on maximum alert, watching for any movement, any sign of approach. She'd moved Dash into her personal quarters, violating yet another rule. But at this point, what was one more? And the creature had curled up on the floor next to her bunk, breathing in sync with her anxious rhythms. Around 3 in the morning, the perimeter alarm sang its soft warning chime. Movement detected. Sector 4. Large mass. Unidentified biosignature. Kate's tablet lit up with sensor data, and her mouth went dry. The heat signature was massive, easily 3 times Dash's size, maybe more. It was moving along the station's northern wall, following a deliberate pattern. Searching. Dash was already awake, its body tense, camouflage flickering between visible and invisible so fast it looked like a strobe light. "It's okay," Kate whispered, though she had no idea if that was true. "It's okay. We're inside. The station's reinforced. It can't get in. Probably." The creature outside, and Kate was now absolutely certain it was an adult mimic, completed its circuit of the station. Then, on the sensor display, she watched it do something that made her stomach drop. It stopped directly in front of the main entrance, and it waited. Not searching anymore. Waiting. Like it knew exactly where its baby was, and it was patient enough to stay until something changed. Kate looked at Dash, who was staring at the door with an expression she couldn't read. Was it fear? Recognition? Longing? All of the above? "Your mom's here," Kate said softly. "Isn't she?" Dash made a sound Kate had never heard before. Low, complex, almost melodic. And from outside the station, muffled through reinforced walls but unmistakable, came an answering call. Mother and child, separated by barriers of metal and human engineering, communicating across the divide. Kate sat down heavily on her bunk, her mind reeling. This was it. Decision time. She could keep Dash here, hope the mother eventually left, maintain the fiction that this was all somehow fine. Or she could open the door, return the baby, and pray that an apex predator understood concepts like, "I meant no harm," and "Please don't eat me." Neither option seemed great. "What do I do?" she asked Dash, knowing the creature couldn't answer in any way she'd understand. "What's the right choice here?" Dash looked at the door, then at Kate, then back at the door. Its body language was tense, but not afraid. More like conflicted, like it was trying to make a decision of its own. And in that moment, Kate realized something that changed everything. This wasn't about what she decided. This wasn't her choice to make. Dash wasn't her pet, wasn't her research subject, wasn't hers at all. Dash was a person, maybe not a human person, but a person nonetheless, with family, with connections, with a life that existed before Kate and would continue after her. "Do you want to go?" Kate asked quietly. "Do you want to see your mom?" Dash made that complex melodic sound again, but it didn't move toward the door. Instead, it pressed against Kate's leg, breathing matching hers, presence solid and real, and choosing to stay. Outside, the adult mimic called again, the sound carrying notes of something that might have been worry, or frustration, or grief. Kate closed her eyes and made a decision that she knew would either be the bravest or stupidest thing she'd ever done. "Okay," she said, standing up and walking toward the door controls. "Okay. We're doing this. We're actually doing this. And if I die, I want it on record that this was a terrible idea that I chose anyway." Dash chirped nervously, following her to the door. Kate's hand hovered over the release control. Every instinct screamed at her to stop, to lock down, to protect herself. But she thought about those tracks circling the station night after night. She thought about a parent searching for a lost child. She thought about Dash's conflicted body language, torn between two worlds. "Here's hoping your mom has a sense of humor," Kate muttered, and pressed the button. The door slid open with a mechanical whisper, revealing the night landscape of Alindra 5. Bioluminescent forests glowing like terrestrial aurora, twin moons painting everything in silver light, and directly in front of the entrance, a creature that made Dash look like a toy. The adult mimic was magnificent and absolutely terrifying. 3 times Dash's size felt like an understatement. Its body was a masterwork of evolutionary engineering, all sleek power and controlled menace. The camouflage was perfect. Kate could see it, and, simultaneously, couldn't, her brain struggling to process what her eyes were reporting. Claws that could shred reinforced steel. Teeth that would make a shark jealous. Eyes that held an intelligence that was unmistakable and unnerving. And those eyes were locked on Kate with an intensity that suggested she was being judged, weighed, measured, evaluated as either friend or food, with the outcome very much in question. Kate stood frozen, very aware that running would be pointless and probably trigger every predator instinct this creature possessed. Next to her, Dash made a soft, uncertain sound. Not quite a call, not quite a whimper. Something in between. The adult mimic's head turned, focusing on Dash. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, deliberately, the massive creature took one step forward. Kate's heart was hammering so hard she was pretty sure it was trying to escape her chest and make a run for it on its own. But she held her ground, because what else could she do? The adult mimic took another step, crossing the threshold into the station. This close, Kate could see the patterns shifting across its skin, the way its breathing moved through its entire body, the raw power contained in every movement. And then, something happened that Kate would spend the rest of her life trying to explain to people who didn't believe her. The adult mimic looked directly at Kate, opened its mouth to reveal far too many teeth, and began to breathe in perfect synchronization with her. Dash's breathing pattern, her breathing pattern. The rhythm they'd been sharing for 8 days, copied perfectly by something that should have seen Kate as prey, not family. "Oh," Kate breathed, understanding flooding through her. "Oh, you've been watching. You know. You know that Dash was copying me, and now you're—" The mimic held her gaze, breathing matching her rhythm exactly, and Kate realized she was witnessing something no human had ever seen before. Not a threat. An acknowledgement. Communication through the only language they had in common. The rhythm of breath. The pattern of life. Kate was no longer sure who had found whom. But standing there in the doorway, with a baby predator at her side and its mother breathing in sync with her, she knew one thing for certain. Her life had just gotten infinitely more complicated. And somehow, impossibly, she was okay with that. The next 20 minutes were, in Kate's professional opinion, completely insane. The adult mimic, who Kate would later name Anthem because of the complex melodic calls it made, didn't attack, didn't threaten, didn't even act particularly aggressive. Instead, it did something far more unnerving. It studied her. Dash moved between them, making soft chirping sounds that seemed to be some kind of explanation, or maybe justification. Hard to tell when you're trying to interpret alien family dynamics while standing in a doorway with a creature that could absolutely end you without breaking a sweat. If it even had sweat glands. Kate wasn't sure. Anthem lowered its massive head, touching Dash gently with what passed for its nose. The gesture was so tender, so unmistakably parental, that Kate felt something crack in her chest. This wasn't a mindless predator. This was a mother who'd spent over a week searching for her lost child. "I'm sorry," Kate said softly, knowing Anthem couldn't understand the words, but needing to say them anyway. "I didn't take Dash. It just showed up. And I should have called it in, I know, but I—" Anthem's head swung toward her, and Kate's words died. Those eyes, huge and multifaceted, held an awareness that was impossible to deny. Not animal intelligence, person intelligence. Then Anthem did something that made Kate's entire understanding of mimic behavior implode. It stepped back, positioned itself directly in front of Kate, and began copying her stance, her posture, her breathing. Every micro-movement Kate made, Anthem mirrored with precision that should have been impossible for something that size. Dash chirped excitedly, bouncing between Kate and Anthem like a child showing off a new friend to their parent. You're learning about me," Kate breathed. "The same way Dash did, through mimicry. That's how your species understands things. You don't just copy for camouflage. You copy to comprehend." Anthem held the mirror pose for another moment, then made a sound. Deep, resonant, unmistakably deliberate. Not a growl. Not a warning. Communication. From somewhere beyond the station perimeter, other calls answered. Different voices, different tones. Kate's blood chilled as she realized what that meant. "You brought the pack," she whispered. Anthem's eyes gleamed with something that might have been amusement or approval. With aliens, interpretation was tricky. And then, like ghosts materializing from the bioluminescent forest, they appeared. 5 more adult mimics, each one massive, each one moving with that same eerie grace. They arranged themselves in a semicircle around the station entrance, and one by one, they began to breathe in sync with Kate. All of them, matching her rhythm, acknowledging her presence in their social structure. Dash had accidentally made Kate part of the pack. "Oh," Kate said faintly. "Oh, this is a problem. This is a wonderful, terrible, completely unprecedented problem." Anthem made that melodic sound again, and the pack responded in harmony. It sounded like a song, like an acceptance, like family. The supply ship arrived 11 days early, which was either spectacularly good timing or catastrophically bad timing, depending on your perspective. Kate was leaning heavily toward catastrophic. She'd spent the past 3 days in a state of controlled chaos, trying to figure out how to explain to Station Command that she'd accidentally become part of an alien pack structure. The mimics had integrated her into their social network with an ease that suggested this wasn't actually that weird for them, which raised about 1,000 questions Kate desperately wanted to research and approximately 0 questions she wanted to answer for military oversight. Because that was the thing about Haven Station that the recruitment materials conveniently failed to emphasize. The funding came from contracts with colonial expansion initiatives. Initiatives that viewed intelligent predators not as protected sentient species, but as obstacles to resource extraction. Kate had spent those 3 days teaching Dash human language through the same mimicry process Dash used for everything else. She'd repeat words, Dash would copy the sounds, and slowly, impossibly, meaning began to stick. Simple concepts at first. Kate, Dash, food, danger. But the progression was exponential. By day 10, Dash could string together basic phrases. By day 11, when the supply ship's landing alert chimed through the station, Dash looked at Kate and said, clear as broken glass, "Family, stay." Kate had sat down heavily, her mind reeling. "You understand," she'd whispered. "You really understand. Not just copying. Understanding." Dash had pressed against her leg, breathing in sync, and repeated, "Family, stay." Which brought her to now, standing in the station's landing bay, watching Officer Halstead descend the ship's ramp with the kind of swagger that suggested he owned not just the ship, but possibly the entire planet. He was older than Kate expected, maybe mid-50s, with the weathered look of someone who'd spent too much time in space and not enough time caring about it. "Hunt," he said, using her last name because apparently first names were too informal for military types. "Station looks intact. No distress signals. So why the delayed reports?" Kate had prepared approximately 15 different explanations, ranging from equipment malfunction to temporary illness to a very creative lie involving atmospheric interference. She used none of them. "I made contact with the native mimic population," she said instead, her voice steady despite her hammering heart. "Extended contact. They're sentient, fully sentient, language capable, tool use capable, complex social structures. This planet qualifies for protection under the Sapient Rights Act." Halstead's expression didn't change. He looked at her for a long moment, then past her, scanning the station interior visible through the bay entrance. "Show me," he said simply. Kate led him to the observation greenhouse, where Dash had been waiting with Anthem. The adult mimic was too large to comfortably fit inside the station, so she'd taken to resting just outside the greenhouse windows, her massive form visible through the transparent dome. Dash had refused to leave Kate's side since the ship landed, staying close with the loyalty of a guard dog and the potential lethality of a tactical weapon. Halstead stopped in the greenhouse doorway, his hand moving instinctively toward his sidearm before he caught himself. That's an apex predator, he said, his voice carefully neutral. That's a juvenile apex predator inside the station and an adult outside the station, and you're standing here like this is normal. It is normal, Kate said. For me, for them, Halstead, they've been here for days. If they wanted to hurt me, I'd be hurt. But that's not how they work. They learn through mimicry. They bond through shared behavior. And Dash— You named it, Halstead interrupted, and something in his tone made Kate pause. Not quite judgment. Something else. Yes, Kate said. I named him. Because he's not an it. He's a person. They all are. Halstead was quiet for a moment, still watching Dash, who was watching him with equal intensity. Then he did something Kate didn't expect. He pulled out his tablet and began typing. The colonial expansion contract for Alindra 5 is worth approximately 800 million credits, he said conversationally, not looking up from his screen. That contract hinges on the planet being categorized as non-sentient indigenous life. If it gets reclassified as protected territory, a lot of very wealthy people lose a lot of potential profit. Kate's stomach dropped. I know what this means. But I can't lie about this. They're people, Halstead. I can prove it. Dash can speak. Basic vocabulary, but actual human language. That alone should be enough to— I'm not asking you to lie, Halstead said, finally looking up. I'm telling you what happens if you tell the truth. Court battles, corporate lawyers, investigations into your methodology, your credibility, your entire career picked apart looking for anything they can use to discredit your findings. And while all that's happening, the development crews keep coming, because legal proceedings take time, and money moves fast. He saved whatever he'd been typing and pocketed his tablet. So here's what's going to happen instead, he continued. Your reports are going to indicate that the mimics are highly intelligent animals with advanced instincts, but no evidence of sapient-level cognition. Dangerous enough that colonial development is inadvisable due to safety concerns, but not protected. This station gets redesignated as a long-term ecological monitoring post with minimal personnel, meaning you stay here, keep studying them, and keep your mouth shut until you have evidence so overwhelming that even corporate lawyers can't argue with it. Kate stared at him. You're asking me to falsify reports. I'm asking you to be strategic, Halstead said. You file the truth now, you lose. The corporations bury your findings, and send development crews anyway. You play this smart, you buy time. Time for your research. Time for the mimics. Time to build a case that can't be ignored. That's not— Kate started, then stopped. Because it was. It absolutely was how things worked. Idealism met reality, and reality had better lawyers. Dash made a soft sound, pressing closer to Kate. Then, with careful precision, said, Family. Stay. Safe. Halstead's eyebrows rose slightly. That's concerning. That's very concerning. How long has it been talking? 3 days, Kate admitted, and learning faster every day. They all are. Anthem, the adult outside, she started mimicking complex sentences. The whole pack is integrating human language into their communication structure. Halstead rubbed his face tiredly. Of course they are. Of course you found the one species in the galaxy that learns by copying and decided to teach it how to argue with bureaucracy. Despite everything, Kate laughed. It was a slightly unhinged laugh, but genuine. Look, Halstead said, his voice softer. I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've watched corporations strip mine 3 worlds that probably should have been protected. I've seen indigenous species relocated, disrupted, or eliminated because their existence was inconvenient. I'm tired of it. So if you're asking whether I'm willing to look the other way while you build an actually defensible case for protection, the answer is yes. But you need time and patience, and you need to be smart about this. Kate looked at Dash, who looked back with those enormous, intelligent eyes. Then she looked at Anthem through the greenhouse windows, and beyond her to the rest of the pack, all breathing in synchronized rhythms, all waiting. "Okay," Kate said finally. "Okay, we do it your way. For now." Halstead nodded, turning to leave. At the doorway, he paused. "For what it's worth, Hunt, I think you did the right thing. Not the safe thing. Not the career-smart thing. But the right thing." After he left, Kate sat down next to Dash, who immediately pressed against her side. Anthem made a melodic call from outside, and the pack responded in harmony, their voices blending into something that sounded almost like music. "Family," Dash said again, and this time added another word, one Kate had been teaching just that morning. "Together." "Yeah," Kate whispered, watching the bioluminescent forests glow in the fading light, watching the pack settle in around the station like a living perimeter of scales and intelligence. "Together." Somewhere in the distance, another mimic called, and another answered. The network spreading, the language growing, the understanding deepening with every shared breath. Kate had come to Alindra 5 to study atmospheric composition and catalog plant life. She'd ended up becoming the first human to join an alien family structure, the first to document genuine cross-species language acquisition, and quite possibly the first xenobiologist to commit career suicide for something that mimicked her breathing pattern and called her family. It was, objectively speaking, the worst decision she'd ever made. It was also, somehow, the best. Dash shifted slightly, getting comfortable, and made that broken wind chimes laugh sound that Kate had learned. Meant contentment. From outside, Anthem answered with her own version, deeper and more resonant. And then, because the universe apparently had a sense of humor, the entire pack joined in. 6 adult mimics and 1 juvenile, all attempting to laugh in harmony, creating a sound that was part music, part chaos, and entirely impossible to describe to anyone who hadn't heard it. Kate laughed too, because what else could you do when your life had become this beautifully, impossibly strange? The laughter echoed through Haven Station, through the greenhouse, out into the bioluminescent forests of Alindra 5. Human and alien, breathing together, laughing together, finding family in the strangest places. And if that laughter sounded wrong, sounded alien, sounded like it shouldn't exist in a universe that made sense, well, maybe the universe needed a little more nonsense anyway. Kate leaned back against Dash's warm, shifting form, watching the twin moons rise over a world that was no longer lonely, and smiled. "Family," she agreed softly, "together." And in the observation greenhouse of Haven Station, surrounded by impossible creatures that breathed when she breathed and laughed when she laughed, Kate Hunt finally felt like she'd come home.